Okay, right. Thanks, everyone. We're going to proceedings. Just to introduce myself, my name's Hassan Mohammed. I'm a public health medicine specialist. I'm affiliated to the Division of Health Systems and Public Health, which is part of the Department of Global Health at Stellenbosch University. Just to say, we've got about 138 people listening online, and we've got an audience here in front of me. So just to say a really warm welcome to all of you to this particular seminar. I think just to emphasize that the focus of the seminar is on Gaza. We know that there have been issues leading up to the holding of the seminar, but I certainly don't want that to detract from the purpose of today, which is on Gaza, and that's where the crisis is, and that's where the focus of this particular seminar is going to be. Let's see. I'll move the slides. Thanks. So as you see, there's the program on the board. Prof. Taryn Young, who's the head of Department of Global Health, will say a few words of introduction. Prof. Almi Muller, who is the Dean of the faculty, will also say a few words, both short presentations. I will do a short background presentation on Gaza and current state of affairs there. And then the main focus will be to hear from health workers in the field. And we have two excellent speakers, Dr. Edward Chu, who's worked with Médecins Sans Frontières, and he has actually worked in Gaza, and we really look forward to him sharing his experiences. We then have Mr. Ala Athlin, who is a physiotherapist who is from Gaza, and recently came to South Africa and can also talk about missions. And really, we all know that conditions in Gaza are quite dire, but we need to hear from people who've been there, who've experienced it, for us to really understand what it's about. We will have a short Q&A session. We also have a special guest, Prof. Haida Eid, who is launching his book at Stellenbosch University tomorrow. But because he happens to be here, we've asked him just to say a few words as well. He's also from Gaza, and I think it's using the opportunity for him to share. But then there will be an opportunity to ask questions. I do want to ask both the audience and the people online, please, to respect all the speakers, allow them to speak, and then there will be that opportunity for all of you to raise questions, to ask questions, and then we will close off and Prof. do that. So without much ado, I'm going to ask Prof. Taryn Young to come and just say a few words. Thank you. Taryn? Okay, just press the page down.
Page down, okay. Well, good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you who are here to join us. I must say I couldn't miss the opportunity to tell you all a bit more about our university and most importantly about the department. So this is from the slide that you see is linked to the vision of Stellenbosch University, and some key highlights on there is that we're aiming to be a university that advances knowledge in service of society. We have some key values, and for me these values really underpin how we do things, how we do research, how we engage, how we promote the use of research in decision making. In terms of our faculty, the faculty's mission is what I want to highlight for you on this slide. And it speaks to facilitating transformative lifelong learning, creating, sharing, and translating knowledge that will enhance health and, importantly, health equity in creating real benefit and value to communities that we serve. And what I really like what the faculty has done with the values is to abbreviate it as I care too. And I think that is really a very good motto for our students, researchers, and for all staff involved. So the Department of Global Health, I thought I'll take the opportunity just to put in the definition there of what global health is all about. I'm not going to read it. I'll leave it for you to have a look at. But we're focusing on advancing global health in Africa and beyond. We have a fantastic team made up of 5 divisions as well as centers and institutes who all work together to achieve what we set out to do. I had to take the opportunity to show you my management team. These are the heads of the various entities within the department, and we work together as a close-knit committee to make decisions related to the department. So if anybody is interested in postgraduate programs, this is an advert. Contact me if you want to know more. We have various PhD, masters, PG DIP and other programs, and we also integrate with various undergraduate programs. The one program, I thought I'll say, just the highlight, we're looking forward to having our 200th graduate of our MSc Clinical Epidemiology program in this year. Wondering who that will be. So the students have a bit of a competition on at the moment. Over and above our postgraduate programs, we strive to conduct research impact, and linked to that, we conduct research on priority questions. We ensure that we do it well and that we avoid duplication in what we do in terms of research. Various members of our department are on WHO committees, on local guideline committees to promote the uptake of evidence into best practice. So a warm welcome from my side to all of you. These seminars is a part of what we do to stimulate academic discussion. Okay, and I think somebody says I must stop now. So I'm going to hand over to Prof. Muller.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly before the start of the seminar. I will not speak for much longer than 5 minutes. At a press briefing almost 3 weeks ago in Geneva, the WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus told correspondents that Gaza has become a death zone. Since the start of the war in October 2023, malnutrition has increased dramatically. The World Food Programme has suspended aid deliveries due to the lack of security for humanitarian personnel, and hundreds of AIDS workers have been killed. The safety of health workers have come under severe threat. Power and medicine in hospitals have run out, and hospitals have been under constant attack. What is unfolding in Gaza is a catastrophe of indescribable magnitude. It stands to reason that discussing the current state of healthcare in Gaza is important and urgent. In the past week, the freedom to have the discussion on our campus in our university has been subject to contrarian actions and responses, at times framed in a rhetoric that imagines freedom and its opposites, unfreedom, repression, and oppression as the only possible ways to think about academic debate and exchange. I should like to note here, as a framing thought for tonight's discussion and the preceding exchanges on academic freedom, Elizabeth Anker's 2022 thesis of Ugly Freedoms. Anker recognizes that the legacy of freedom in liberal democracy has already been entangled with white supremacy, settler colonialism, climate destruction, economic exploitation, and patriarchy. These freedoms were ugly, she argues, because they legitimated the right to exploit and subjugate others. The institutionalization of academic freedom in the colonial university is an idealized version of these freedoms. The concept of academic freedom should therefore be treated circumspectly and as more than an instrument for political leverage. Considering Anker's work, Dina Beluiki writes that de-idealization freedom in scholarship and academe does not translate to discarding it altogether. And she makes the point that more diverse constructions of collective, cooperative modes of freedom and free action exist. I should like to ask, as we engage with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and its healthcare implications tonight, that we acknowledge our responsibility to maintain our freedom to do so. I would argue that this freedom is contingent on our ability to engage in a cooperative mode that allows the diversity of academic and cultural identities that constitute our academic body politic to remain productively engaged. We have to speak and continue speaking, as in the words of Ahmed Aesop, silence does not explain, educate, or change minds. Let us then speak tonight in a way that neither idealizes academic freedom in a normative way, nor discards it, nor wields it as a weapon. Let us rather work towards strengthening it through the way in which we conduct the conversation.
And we thank the Department of Global Health and the team for their inputs. Slides again. So one way of framing the discussion on Gaza is to go back to a very popular way of understanding health systems, and the focus is on healthcare and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And what we use are these health system blocks, and those are listed there. And we'll come back to these a bit later in the program. I'm not going to detail these as they are, or read them out, and you can see them. And there are obviously certain goals that need to be achieved by these building blocks. We are, as Global Health, have done this in collaboration with a group called Healthcare Workers for Palestine. And I'm going to ask Masouda just to say a few words on behalf of Healthcare Workers for Palestine. Masouda?
Thanks, Hassan. Hi, everybody. So I'm Masouda Palika. I'm a public health medicine registrar at Stellenbosch University, and I'm also a member of Healthcare Workers for Palestine. So who Healthcare Workers for Palestine are? We a group, started as quite a small group of healthcare workers who saw what is happening in Palestine, saw the atrocities and the siege of the Israeli occupation, and particularly on the consequences of healthcare and the health systems and the crumbling health systems in Palestine. And really, we're just trying to advocate through engagements, in-person engagements, online engagements, social media engagements. You can follow us at any of these social media sites. You can scan the QR code or follow us on Instagram. But essentially, we just want to get the word out there. The group has really grown exponentially, and we welcome new students, staff, any healthcare workers, anyone who works in the health facility or works in health, to be part of our membership and help support us and see where we can go from here. And just to share with you some, I mean, we've done vigils, we've done talks. We really are a nice bunch of people, and we welcome you to join us and join the team. And I'm going to hand over to Hassan now to continue with the rest of the talk. Thanks. Oh, one more thing to note. We are recording, just a few housekeeping things. We are recording, and we would like to take some pictures for our social media. If you do not want to be in any of the pictures, please let one of the people with Healthcare Workers for Palestine t-shirts know, so that we will not post anything of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Masuda, and for that overview. And I think, needless to say, the topic that we're talking about today is very much relevant to the work of healthcare workers for Palestine, who are arranging a number of lectures over this period, and we, as Department of Global Health, are very happy to be collaborating with them. So, just in terms of background, I started trying to put together a very summary history of the conflict.
Just ask people to move to the center so that we can get people to sit down.
All right, before we proceed, can people move inwards towards the center so that people at the back can sit down? Apologies to those people online. We're just needing to find more seats for people in this auditorium. So I thought about trying to summarize in my very short presentation the history of what's been happening in the Palestine-Israel area, and I decided it's an impossible task and I would not do justice to it. There are a number of authors, I've mentioned a few. A number of them are Jewish Israeli authors who have written critical pieces on the history of that area, but I'm certainly not claiming it's a complete list, and I'm sure Prof. Haider can also be added to that list, and recommend many other, providing a historical background. But I think the main point is that this recent conflict did not occur in isolation. It occurred in the background of a long-standing conflict in the area, particularly with respect to Gaza. There have been a number of wars over the last 16 years, and there are two very useful reports. The one is by Amnesty International, which is an independent organization, a human rights organization, talking about Operation Cast Lead. And what you'll get out of that is are familiar patterns for how particular wars are conducted. You'll see attacks on civilians, attacks on healthcare institutions, etc., captured there. Similarly, a medical fact-finding mission report. One of a South African pediatrician went on this mission, and again similarly provided a report of their experiences in Gaza. I'm not sure if this is readily available, but I'm happy to share it, and he was happy to share it with me. This is a useful graphic which illustrates the background to what's been happening in Gaza. Several conflicts over the last 16, 17 years or more, shown graphically in the eyes of a child that was born during this period from 2007, essentially growing up in a period of conflict after conflict after conflict. And one can only imagine what a 16-year-old child of today has experienced over this particular period. So just summarizing what the current status is, and very rapidly, this is a graphic obtained from Al Jazeera News Network, but they have referenced, it's just a very nice graphic, which is why I've used it, but they do reference sources such as the Israeli government, the Gaza Ministry of Health, and other accepted resources to compile this graphic. So shockingly, in this war, more than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, the majority women and children. 71,000 have been injured, so more than 100,000 either killed or injured through this conflict. We know that from the 7th of October, on the left-hand side, you see 1,139 Israelis killed and 8,000 injured. The West Bank has been very much part of this conflict, and at least 420 people have been killed there, more than 4,600 injured. On the left, we know that 240 hostages were taken on the 7th of October, and there remains 134 still being held as hostages in Gaza. On the right-hand side, over this period, more than 7,000 Palestinians have been arrested and from the West Bank have been put in prison. At the bottom, I reference a report on sexual violence. So the United Nations has issued statements from investigations of sexual violence perpetrated, they say, by Hamas, as well as by the Israeli Defense Force against Palestinian women and girls. These are bits of information that we all need to engage in and form very much part of the picture of what's been happening in Gaza. So, you know, from the start of the conflict, people have questioned the data coming out of Gaza, sometimes trying to demean the quality of data by saying it's the Hamas-run Gaza Ministry of Health figures, trying to place some kind of negative connotation. This is correspondence published in the Lancet, which have analyzed the data and the data systems used in Gaza, and it's quite clear that the data are credible. Only limitation of these data are that they suggest an underestimate, and that as the war continues, that underestimate is probably more. People who are still trapped under the rubble are not included in the figures. There are details of names and ID numbers, and it's a comprehensive system, and it's used by United Nations agencies, by world media. So in terms of questioning the data that's provided, certainly should be dismissed. In terms of infrastructure damage, you'll see the graphic. I'm not going to go into the details, but just highlight that only 12 of 35 hospitals in Gaza are still functioning, so as relevant to the discussion that we have today. But there's been wide-scale destruction in the area. 1.7 million people have been displaced. I've mentioned 70% of those killed are women and children. And then in terms of the primary healthcare system, only 7 out of 22 primary healthcare centers are functioning. 766 healthcare staff continue to run or work in these health centers. Excuse me. I think important to add is that more than 400 healthcare workers have been killed in Gaza, more than 100 journalists. So this is no ordinary conflict. And this matter has been taken by South Africa to the ICJ, to the International Court of Justice, who have on 26th of January made a finding that there is a plausible case of genocide happening in Gaza. This was confirmed by a US court in Sacramento who have also indicated that there is a clear case, plausible case of genocide. So certainly there is, based on what we see for ourselves and also the information that has been provided and by the findings of these independent it's clear that there is evidence for genocide. So going back to those building blocks, someone's provided me with water, thank you. In terms of leadership and governance, I hope our speakers will talk a bit more about this aspect, because I'm not as familiar with it, but obviously very challenging to run and coordinate a health system when under conditions of war. In addition, there are constant communications breakdown, so that obviously impedes the effectiveness of trying to coordinate the work of our health system. In terms of the healthcare force, healthcare financing, we know that Israel has withheld funds from the Palestinian Authority, and particularly that part of the funding that's meant to be used for Ministry of Health in Gaza. And then the United Nations Relief and Works Agency has also had funding cut, and they are one of the main agencies doing relief work. So clearly there's serious impairment under this building block in terms of healthcare financing for the healthcare system. In terms of the health workforce, as I've noted, more than 400 healthcare workers have been killed, and then a number of have been arrested, and there have also been reports of torture of healthcare workers by the Israeli Defense Force. In terms of medical products and technologies, there are severe shortages, flow of aid is limited and very difficult under war conditions. There is reports of aid into Gaza being restricted by Israel. All aid going into Gaza has to go through an Israeli checkpoint, and they talk about what's dual use, anything that they define as dual use that could be used in theory as weapons, and that includes a lot of medical equipment and medical products are restricted from going in. So this obviously impairs the ability of the healthcare system to function. In terms of information and research, obviously research is not something that's possible, and of course we know that there is a basic information system that exists but works under very difficult conditions. In terms of service delivery, anything from dialysis to management of cancer, management of chronic diseases, routine care has been severely impaired by the wide-scale destruction of the healthcare system and of healthcare infrastructure. But I think added to this is also breakdowns in infrastructure such as water, sanitation, fuel to supply the population, and that has created conditions for infectious disease outbreaks. I saw a report recently, the Ministry of Health said they've had up to 1 million cases of infectious diseases in the area, so massive amounts of infectious diseases, which was predicted and expected based on the conditions. In terms of the future, there's a very useful study done by the Johns Hopkins University and the London School of Hygiene, looking at various scenarios, a ceasefire scenario, a scenario where there's no ceasefire, and a scenario where there's escalation of the conflict. And of course, at least 58,000 people are, in fact, more than the number of people who have been reported to have died, are expected to die over the next 6 months. if a humanitarian ceasefire is not immediately implemented. So, and this then just summarizes the International Court of Justice findings, which I've mentioned earlier on. I won't go into that. So thank you for that. We're now going to go on to our speakers. And again, just to remind you, there will be a question and answer session. So I'm going to welcome Dr. Edward Chu to the podium. And he has worked with Médecins Sans Frontières, but he's working as a doctor now at Tygerberg Hospital. Edward, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for giving us that context and covering many of the figures that give us, a sense of the scale of the humanitarian emergency that is taking place right now in Gaza. I'm just going to put a timer to try and control myself. Feel free to flag me. I'll try and stay within my time. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk with you, to share my own experience. I will mention that I'm speaking from for myself as an individual and not for MSF as a whole, but I think it will be helpful to share a bit some of my own personal experiences, my motivation for working in a context like this for an audience such as yourselves. So I was asked to talk a bit about why and when was I working in Gaza, a bit about the current status of healthcare, although I'll try and keep that part short. I think we got a very good summary of that, and also to speak a bit to what we can do as healthcare providers in terms of advocacy in the face of situations like this. I'm an emergency medicine trained doctor, and I've been working with different humanitarian organizations since around 2009. My first assignment with MSF was back in 2016. And as to why go into a situation like this, even with the experience that we have in organizations like MSF working in conflicts, this situation is on another level in terms of the intensity, the violence of the bombing, the lack of respect for healthcare facilities and healthcare workers, posing really an extraordinary risk to anybody working in the Gaza Strip at this time. Even more so for our Palestinian colleagues who are there under even more difficult circumstances. I think oftentimes, whether it's at the beginning of your assignment or when you get home, we're often faced with situations where we feel like the care that we're able to provide is a drop in the bucket, where we feel inadequate in terms of what we were able to accomplish in the face of the overwhelming needs that we face. And something that I read after my first assignment that still motivates me and helped me to decide to go and work in Gaza, in addition to the care that we can provide as clinicians. Human rights are not something that exist. They're not a concrete thing that exists in the world without our efforts to assert that they should exist. If we don't go to places where people's access to healthcare is being threatened and assert that, yes, even in the face of war, in the face of famine, in the face of disasters, people have a right to access healthcare. That's not a right that exists in the absence of that. And so even if our efforts are inadequate to the need that we face, I do believe that by going there, by being present, by going and asserting through our presence that the populations that we are trying to help have a right to access to healthcare. Many times, I think that is often the stronger statement that we're able to make, the bigger impact that we can have. And that, I think, is nowhere more true than in Gaza right now. I went with a small team in the beginning of December. We arrived in Cairo. The one kind of entry and exit into Rafah for people is the Rafah crossing through Egypt. It actually took us almost 2 weeks to get the permissions to be able to cross into Gaza. So we weren't able to get into the Gaza Strip to relieve the initial teams that were there until the middle of December, and then our replacements arrived at the beginning of January. It seems like a very short period. I can tell you it didn't feel that way. The rotations that we have are short in these high security contexts for two main reasons. One is the exhaustion that you have working essentially 7 days a week. In this particular context, especially with shellings that were always more intensive at night, you never are able to sleep through the night. But also because there's this phenomenon when you look at your colleagues also getting up and going to work despite the shooting and the shelling that's happening, for things to start to feel normal. It's a coping strategy that we have, but over time it puts us and our colleagues at risk. And so that's the other reason that we rotate people out very quickly under these circumstances, especially those who are making decisions about our safety. It's important that they not get used to that the risks that we are taking don't get normalized and get refreshed with new teams. In terms of what I did, there were basically three main things that I was involved in when I arrived. First was making sure that we had the supplies that were finally starting to arrive. That was something that all of us, the whole team, gets involved in. Whether you're the pharmacist that we brought in with our team, but the supplies arrive in trucks, in huge pallets, and everyone has to start sorting, figuring out what's there and getting it organized. So my role was helping the team make sure that we found what equipment we could find for the emergency care activities, for the donations that we wanted to make to some of the other health facilities, and find out what made it through and what didn't, because it is a fraction, a drop of what is waiting at the border that is getting through, and that's even less now than when we left in January, when my team rotated out. The other main focus was on preparing, establishing a healthcare activity further from the front line in Rafah, because we knew that already the team that was there before us, that was working in the OT and in Al Nasser Hospital, in the emergency department in Khan Yunis, already was only able to go some days of the week. Some days the movements had to be canceled because of risk of shelling. And so we knew that we needed to try and establish a facility, some care in Rafah. And so the bulk of our focus initially was to try and get that up and running, and because we anticipated, we could see that the days that the facilities in Nasser could be functioning were numbered. We had another team in Al-Aqsa, and since our relief team rotated in, we've had to both evacuate from Al Nasser, from Al-Aqsa, the last major health facility in Han Yunis that is still functioning, as far as I know, is the European Gaza hospital. And when we say functioning, when you see the figures, 12 hospitals out of 36, I think what's important to remember is those hospitals are beyond the point of collapse. I mean, even the hospitals where there are staff that are working. When I arrived and was able to visit Al Nasser in the middle of December, you're talking about a hospital that is working at 2-3 times capacity. Patients are spread out all over the hospital wherever they can find space. There's an entire population that's taking shelter in the hospital in any open space. Talking with the doctors in the OT, they could not find their patients after they operate on them and they get released into the hospital because of the number of people, the chaos in having patients, in any space, in any ward. It's not a surgical ward where your patients go after the OT. They go wherever they can find some space, and finding those patients again is an impossible task in that kind of chaos. That's what a functioning hospital at that time looks like, and the kind of healthcare that you can provide with limited resources, with staff that are exhausted. I think it's important to bear that in mind when we hear about what hospitals are still functioning. So the current status of healthcare right now, I can share a bit, is limited. From I came back at the beginning of January, things have certainly gotten worse. We've had to evacuate from Al Nasser, from Al-Aqsa. In Rafah, there is no major hospital the size of what there was in the north and in the middle of Gaza. Al Nasser is the second largest hospital. Al-Shifa was the largest hospital in Gaza. Those are either non-functioning or barely functioning. What's left, Al-Najr Hospital, the public hospital in Rafah, was built as a clinic. It was upgraded as a hospital, but was never designed to have the capacity that these other facilities have had. We've just heard 2 days ago a shelling just at the entrance of Al-Emirati Hospital, the maternity hospital in Rafah. So already a health system that was on the brink of collapse is being further squeezed. The strip where the majority of the population has been displaced along the Rafah border is completely overwhelming compared to what the health system was designed to in that part of Rafah to serve, and these hospitals that remain are no doubt experiencing the same situation that I've just described from when we saw in the middle of December. I also wanted to, I was asked to speak a bit about what we can do as healthcare providers in terms of advocacy. I think it is still essential that we continue to call for an immediate ceasefire, to call for unhindered access to healthcare. But I think what also is incredibly important, and that I'd like to share with you, that I've become even more aware of after this experience, but is true in many of the places that I've gone to work. MSF and the majority of other humanitarian organizations, we don't rely on any kind of armed protection in the places that we work. It is the respect that we have as healthcare providers that protects us. Our neutrality and our willingness to take care of whoever comes to our clinic or a hospital, our acceptance by the community that protects us. It's that role that we have, that compact that we have with society as doctors and nurses and healthcare providers that protects us. And the importance that of protecting that relationship, of asserting that relationship, of us as healthcare providers asserting the right of everyone to have access to healthcare is what protects us, is what protects our role in society. We receive so many benefits as healthcare providers from society, the respect that we get, the special role, the authority that we speak with when we advocate. That is thanks to the relationship, the sacrifice, the care that those who've come before us have created for us, and that what we do protects that relationship for those that come after and right in the present. And so the responsibility that you have, the sacrifices that you make to make sure that, you know, in your ComServe, you're serving patients that have limited access to healthcare, the difficult situations that you work in, but still coming to work, taking care of your patients. I think that, you know, I'm not trying to over romanticize it. That really is what protects us as a profession in places where, you know, our safety is very directly threatened. But, you know, I feel safe going to Kailicha. I had the opportunity to go last week, partly because I'm a doctor and I know the community would see me that way in my scrubs with my stethoscope. That is a special relationship that we have with society, and it's not guaranteed. It's thanks to the sacrifices of our Palestinian colleagues who stay in these hospitals even after we've had to evacuate, that remind society what our dedication is as clinicians. The sacrifices that you made here and all over the world during COVID to remind society of what our dedication is all a part of that. And, you know, I think many times we may be reluctant, you know, as individual doctors and nurses, to get our hands dirty with, you know, with politics, with advocacy, with the annoying meetings that, you know, happen in our hospitals. But we can't just see ourselves and say, you know, my role is just at the bedside. We have to advocate for patients if we want to continue to have and benefit from this relationship that we have with society. We have to get our hands dirty. We have to advocate for our patients' rights, for their access to healthcare. And I think that is the message I would like to share with you. What you do protects me when I go into the field, and protects all of us when we go into communities where, you know, otherwise, you know, I've seen in the short time that I've been here with you, the amount of violence, unfortunately, that afflicts many of the communities that you serve. We have to protect that special relationship, and what you do matters. What you do directly reinforces that relationship that we have with society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chu. I think that you summarized it so well and so eloquently spoke about how and why we need to be advocates as healthcare workers. We're going to take questions at the end. So I'm going to call up our next speaker, Mr. Ala Hathleen. Ala is a Palestinian physiotherapist. He's from Hebron, Palestine. He had to escape due to threat on his lives and threat on his family. But I will let him tell his story now. Thank you, Ala.
Hi everyone, I'm Ala Hathleen, 24 years old, in the West Bank in the south of Hebron. I'm actually a physical therapist and activist, and both of them is not choice. To be in Palestine, you don't have the right to choose what you want. I become a physical therapist after I see my father suffering from stroke, and I see how much difficult with all the checkpoints around West Bank to arrive to the health clinic and to get physical therapy sessions. And I become activist after the Israel's court declare our land as a firing zone and a military land. And after that, I living actually without basic needs. The first time I see electricity, water, homes, all the infrastructures. I live in tents, in caves, without anything. In my community, especially in West Bank, I can't tell you, like, I spent half of my life in the checkpoint. I can't tell you, and I have many personal experience with the health care in my community. But I will talk about it later after I talk about my people in Gaza, our people in Gaza, and what happened with them there. And actually, I see all the numbers when the doctor is talking, but I will say it again, all the numbers, because we are not numbers. Every one of us have a life. Every one of us have a big life, have a family, have dreams, have everything. Because of that, I will repeat all the numbers again. After 151 days since the genocide were starting, and I continue to say it's not a conflict. It's a genocide. It's ethnic cleansing. We don't have to say it's a conflict or war. It's not a conflict. It's not a war. It's a genocide. After 150 days since the genocide war began, 2,627 massacres committed by the occupations, 39,178 murders and missing, 30,000 murder and who were reaching in the hospitals, 14 child murders, 9 child who died because of starvations, 8,860 women's murder, 340 murders from the medical teams, and 269 arrested. 47 murders from civil defense, 132 murders among journalists, 1,000 missing under the rubbles, 73,217 wounded, 150 ambulance targeting at both over the service, 179 medical facilities are destroyed. Today I say 12 of 36 hospitals are only partially functioning in Gaza. And only 36% of the health shelter remain function and with partial capacity. The healthcare crisis in Gaza unthinkably grim. The infectious disease from the chickenpox to cholera sweeping through the populations. And the other health care risk, including dehydration, hepatitis, the lack of the clean water can lead to many diseases, such as skin disease. And also, if there's no water, maybe we will face the dehydrations. The hospital are not more like with just treating with the emergency cases. No longer admit patients with injuries, sprains, cold-relating symptoms. It isn't life-threatening. Surgeries, including amputations, are performed without anesthesia or pain relief. Israel's occupation steal the organs of the people, Palestinian people, after they're killing them. Across Gaza, 52,000 women pregnant, and over than 150 babies are delivered every day without access to trained health worker or midwife. The childbirth can threaten the life of both the mother and the children in Gaza. Especially when you are living in these challenging circumstances. And how many people now, just think how many people can become disabled now after this war, after this genocide, the targeting and killing the healthcare workers and the first responsible and the ambulance men and the self-defense every day. The last thing Dr. Mustafa Najjar says before they killed him, we have been defeated in the front of the children. The people in Gaza dying from the starvation when the harsh pains of the world are overflowing. There is no justice in this world. This is the last thing that Dr. Mustafa Najjar says. I hear many of the stories of my friends and my colleagues in Gaza. Just imagine when you are a doctor and running to the emergency room for help. and you find the murderer or the wounded is your son. How do you feel when you are a doctor and amputate your young daughter's feet without anesthesia? How do you feel when you are working in the medical sector in Gaza and you don't know about anything about your family, if they are alive or not yet? My friend Dr. Aziz is a medical student. He lost all of his family. All of his family. You want me to talk about the woman who took more than 100,000 injections to get birth a child after waiting 20 years, and then this child is killing in this genocide? Or do you want me to talk about the child who born and died in this war? Mustafa Hamdan is a civil defenses man, was shocked when he helping the people to get out under the rubble. One of the murderers was his brother. And I say, there is no greater evil than the massacring starving people who collecting the food for their dying children. While the people in Gaza are bombing and killing and collecting the remains of their children to riot, the Western media, worried and busy about a Zionist student, is feel not safe in the university. I say enough hypocrisy in this world. We feel full of the hypocrisy. The occupation killed all the meaning of the humanity which we live for. And about my personal stories, I'm actually my uncle killed by the Israeli settlers. Two of my brothers in the jail now. My uncle was his old man, 70 years old. His name is Sulaiman Al-Hadalin. He's a peaceful resistance man in West Bank. He was all the time just resisting with his body, no weapons, nothing, peaceful resistance. And one of the day, just the settlers decide to run over him 10 meters under the truck, and they're killing him. I'm the first one arrived to him. I hold some of his skull in my hand. And I hope they are stopping here. They're going directly to the entrance, and they close the entrance, and they prevent the ambulance to enter to take him to the hospitals. In this situation, if I have 100% that my uncle will survive, I lost it because what they are doing. My neighbors, Hafid al-Huraini, he's old, he's 45 years old. He was working in his field, close to his house. Suddenly, settlers decide to attack him, and this is what I face and my family face every day. The settlers attack the settler violence in the West Bank now. They attack Hafid and they broke both of his hands. And when the ambulance come to take Hafid and we put him in the ambulance, they decide to shooting the wheels of the ambulance and take Hafid from the ambulance and put him in the jail. My friend Harun Abaram, he is 24 years old. In 2020, he was deciding he want to marry and he have a fiancée, and he preparing himself after 4 or 5 months to marry. He building a nice house, but the occupation side destroy everything. In December 2020, they came and they demolished his house. It's not a house actually, it's a tent. I have to put everything in their names. It's a tent and they destroy it. I hope they are stopping here. They are continue after 1 month. Harun was working in generator to prepare a cave to marry in the caves. But also they came and trying to confiscate the generator and they shooting Harun. Harun was suffering 1 year from quadriplegia and from bed sores. And he came back after 10 months in the hospital and his heart stopped 5 times. He came back to live in the caves in Masafar Yatta. Harun passed for 1 year. And I remember very well what he said. He tell me, Allah, I was the physical therapist for him. I was with him every day. He tell me, Allah, I can't forgive this Israeli soldier. I was shocked. I tell him, Harun, please tell me how. He tell me if he can come and continue what he started killing me. Because I will go to the God and it's enough from all this pain around me. I can tell you my nephews also. My brother's wife was pregnant and we transferred her to the hospitals and suddenly they stop us in the checkpoint, and one of my nephews get burned in the checkpoint. I live in Palestine after I become a target for the Israeli settlers because I'm an activist. I'm sharing and expose all their crimes there. In my community, the Israeli occupation, my house, my tent, has get demolished 6 times. I'm the most close one to the settlement in all Palestine. I'm just living 2 meters away from the settlement. And they declare our land as a firing zone and the military land. Just imagine, like this is 2 meters. This settlement is not firing zone and the military land. But this village, the small village, without anything, without the basic needs, is a military land. It's just a pretext to take the land. You can see the complete Israel all the time, Israel's occupation all the time say, we are the only democracy state in the Middle East. I can tell you like the democracy from what I see from my community. You can see the settlement around all of us from the 4 sides. And you can see the electricity lines and the waters go through our village from the settlement to the Israeli chicken farm, but it's not allow us as a human to take it, to use these electricity lines. After I become a target, I decided to leave. Even I wasn't able to greet my family and tell them goodbye because I was afraid any information will reach the settlers and they will kill me before I leave. And if it's for me, wallahi, I prefer to die in Palestine, to leave. But you know, they will take advantage. They're looking for you to attack your family. My brother, he's 16 years old. One of the night, they're storming our house and they research and they didn't find anything. It's every night. The night raids is every night in Palestine. It's something normal. We get used to dealing with it. This 16-year-old, he's a child. They're looking in his phone and they find a photo for the children of Gaza. And they decide to arrest him. And it's illegal arrest because they didn't even take him to the police station or anything. They took him all the night, beating him, hitting him all the night, breaking his both hands, both legs. And he told me, wallahi, they're putting their fingers inside my eyes. They bring a dirty water and let me drink it. And the next days, they throw him far away from us. And we didn't know anything about him. And he have to walk more than 20 kilometers until he arrived to someone and tell him, call my family, I'm here and I'm alive now, until now. After that, he's being in a coma for a week. And we arrived to him after 6 months. I leave my brothers, I leave Palestine in 20 January. And I talked with my brother the day before I'm leaving. He was not with me. Mentally, he's not okay. I talked with him, he's not with me. I asked him, his name is Dia. Dia, how are you? He didn't answer me. This is some of the things I face, some of the suffering. It's nothing. It's really how much I talk, how many videos you see. It's nothing comparing with our suffering. Keep saying we will stay in our land, keep fast in our land. We will not leave, even we become a target. My family, all the time was talking to them, leave. Our safety, your life is not safe. Leave. They tell me we will not leave. This is what they want. They want us to leave. And as anyone think Israel is like just looking for destroying Hamas, they are not looking for destroying Hamas. They are looking for ethnic cleansing all the Palestinian people. And you can see that everywhere. The last thing, the Israel parliament is voting, all the Israel parliament voting against the Palestinian state. What's that mean? That means there's no, they didn't see us as a human like them. That's some of my stories, some of my experience. And thank you all for hearing me.
No, thanks, Alan. That was very hard to listen to. But I think you've helped us look beyond the numbers, to behind the numbers, and that's, you know, we're talking about humanity, and you know, struggle of the Palestinians, and that's one to take up is about, you know, to this issue of time. But thank you so much. I think that was very clear, and we really appreciate it. To ask before we get into question time, Prof. Haida Eid to just say a few words before we proceed. He's also Palestinian, and I think about something that's happening far away. It always is hugely important to hear from the people who are there, who have been there. So thanks so much for just saying a few words to us.
Thank you. Professor Hassan Muhammad, right? Dr. Edward Chu, Ustaz Ala, dear colleagues, students. Of course, after listening to Ala and his story, and Ala is from the West Bank, he's from Masafa Riyadh. I come from the Gaza Strip. I spent the first 2 months of the genocide in Gaza, and I'm going to keep it very short because tomorrow I will be talking about my experience in Gaza, and I will be talking about political solutions as well, because I've been invited by the English department of Stellenbosch University. So this is an invitation to everybody to come and listen again to the same story. But it's extremely difficult to talk about Gaza. And sometimes I tell myself that I should stop talking about Gaza, because the question, as expressed by Ala, is the world listening? Is really the world listening? I myself have been in Gaza since 2005. In 2006, we were asked to vote and choose our representatives in the PLC, Palestine Legislative Council. People voted against the Oslo Accords. People voted against the racist two-state solution. People voted a new political vision. And because people voted against the will of the occupier, against the will of American imperialism and the colonial West and reactionary Arab regimes, Israel, in cahoot with the Americans, in cahoot with reactionary Arab regimes, decided to impose a deadly siege on Gaza. And it has been going on since then, January 2006. And as if that was not enough, apartheid Israel, I used to call it apartheid Israel, now I'm calling it genocidal Israel, decided to launch a massive attack against the civilians of Gaza in 2008, 2009, killing within 22 days more than 1,200 people, including more than 430 children. Again, we are going back to figures and numbers. As if that was not enough, apartheid Israel decided to do the same thing in 2012, and again 2014, and I was there. And I saw amputated bodies of people, of Palestinian children. And I remember, I was on Al Jazeera at that time. And the question I raise is, how many amputated bodies of Palestinian children does the international community want to see in order to act? The international community did absolutely nothing. And this is why apartheid Israel in 2021 did the same thing. And now apartheid Israel has decided to commit not only ethnic cleansing. I personally believe it's a combination of genocide and ethnic cleansing. I want to personalize the whole issue. I have lost more than 40 of my cousins. Entire families, whole families were wiped out, including my cousins. I've lost 2 of my colleagues in the English department of Al-Aqsa University, which used to be Al-Aqsa University. It is no longer there. And I'm so glad to hear, Dr. Chu, that the European hospital is still functioning. I didn't know that, actually. I thought that all hospitals were destroyed. 5 universities out of 6 universities in Gaza were destroyed. About 95 academics have been killed, including 88 professors, including 3 presidents of universities have been killed. And this is why academic institutions, including academic institutions in South Africa, have a responsibility, moral and ethical responsibility, to cut all academic ties with Israeli universities. I always say, and I have been talking since I arrived in South Africa. I arrived with my family, 2 kids, Haifa and Selma, and my wife, Rafqa. Thanks to the South African government, Department of International Relations and Cooperations, because they kept nagging the Israelis to evacuate us. They failed to do that for 2 months, but after 2 months, they managed to get us out of Palestine. Did I want to leave? The same question Ala asked. The South African government contacted me actually in 2009, and I refused to leave. 2012, I refused to leave. 2014, I refused to leave. At the beginning of the ongoing genocide, I refused to leave. But I lost my house. I lost my neighborhood. I lost everything, and I have been displaced 4 times. I've been displaced 4 times. Last time I was in Rafah, and I saw dead bodies under the rubble. Actually, the figure is more than 10,000 now. More than 10,000 people are still under the rubble. What do we want? Very quickly. I know I'm not allowed to talk more than 5 minutes. I was not on the list of the speakers. Well, my existence was denied. Okay, my existence is denied in Palestine, and now my existence is being acknowledged in South Africa. Right. Well, the last point, actually, I am a co-founding member of the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel, a co-founder of the BDS movement, and a co-founder of the One State campaign. What do we want? We want immediate ceasefire. No question about that. This is what Palestinians of Gaza want. We want the flow of humanitarian aid. We don't want the farce of airlifting and dropping, a drop in the ocean. We need at least 2,000 trucks of humanitarian aid to enter Gaza in order to start talking about normal life. What we want freedom, we want equality, and we want justice. Thank you so much.
Apologies for interrupting you, but I think we did want to, time has